Good Monday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. Talking plenty of Browns. And Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus both feel the Browns can make the playoffs in 2023.
Consequently, the Cleveland Browns will make the playoffs this year. Like, we just praised the work they've done along the defensive line, bringing in Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, like Okoronkwo, all the work they've done.
I love a lot of what the Browns have done, and it completely depends on, Deshaun Watson graded at 55 last year.
Yeah, bad.
And it really comes down to, was he rusty for 5 or 6 weeks? Because it also didn't make sense, the order in which he played, right? He was okay at first, and then he got worse as the season went on.
If he gets even to like 75 next year, it's a massive improvement over what they had last season and should be good enough to take them to, again, at least playoff contention. And then, who knows if they make it or not in week 17.
They have to get better defensively, but yeah, they've added a lot there, I think.
And with that, let's welcome in Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs podcast, as well as Network 216. Tyler, there's a wide variety between what the national media thinks the Browns will end up doing, and most of it should be based on the play of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and rightfully so, Dave. Deshaun Watson is going to determine whether or not the Browns are a playoff team this year. I think it's really as simple as that. For many years, the Browns have not had their franchise quarterback. Baker Mayfield showed flashes of that during his time in Cleveland, but ultimately the Browns had to move on from him as well. And now Deshaun Watson is the guy that you've invested $230 million in, and you believe he is your franchise quarterback. We've talked about it a lot. The numbers prove that Deshaun Watson is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. You look at it his time in Houston. Unfortunately, now the narrative has changed because of the fact that he struggled as bad as he did those last 6 games of the year. There's a lot that went into why that was the case. Again, you talk about when you miss nearly 2 years of football, trying to speed up that quickly in the middle of the year, when the Browns are also trying to contend for a playoff spot during that time, because Jacoby Brissett did keep the offense afloat during that time. And then you just move into the fact that he's learning a brand new offense basically on the fly, because the offense the Browns ran with Jacoby Brissett was different than what they tried to run with Deshaun Watson. So a lot played into that, but the narrative is going to be nationally that Deshaun Watson is going to be determined what happens with the Browns as far as making the playoffs and making a deep run. They have all the talent, like that's been mentioned many times before. The talent's there on defense. It's been revamped. You brought in Jim Schwartz. You brought in Bubba Ventrone to really help fix the special teams unit. It's all there. Deshaun Watson has the keys, and he will determine what happens for the Browns this season. Bottom line, there's plenty of talent around him, plenty of talent for Kevin Stefanski. Now it's time to really make it translate into wins and into a playoff appearance.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I want Kevin Stefanski to give him the keys and give him a whole lot of freedom to, go ahead and drive 55 and a 35 if you can, because they're going to need that. Along those lines, this is from the Bleacher Report. Reasons to buy the NFL division's biggest wild card teams for the 2023 season. AFC North, the Browns. Number 1. A defensive overhaul should help counter high-scoring offenses. Number 2, wide receiver additions will stress opposing secondaries. And number 3, Deshaun Watson will be available from the beginning of the season. The other thing that, we haven't really talked about as much, that offense was not the offense that would have been designed for Deshaun Watson if he was going to be the quarterback all 17 weeks of the season now.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because a lot of people seem to forget that this offense was designed around Jacoby Brissett, and the Browns paid Jacoby Brissett essentially to be a spot starter. They gave him a pretty decent contract in order to do that, because the expectation was that Jacoby Brissett was going to have to start, a lot of people thought, 6 games. So the offense was tailored around that for 6 games. Well, when the suspension got changed, it was Jacoby's offense for the majority of the season. That's always how it was going to be this year, because you had to set up the offense for Jacoby Brissett to succeed, because he was going to be the guy that was playing the majority of the snaps for the team in 2023. And a lot of people seem to forget that offense that Brissett had to run compared to what they tried to run with Deshaun Watson, completely night and day. It's very difficult for anyone. It doesn't even matter. I mean, if Kyle Shanahan was the coach, Sean McVay, some of the best, you could say the best offensive minds in the NFL, even Andy Reid, you're transitioning a completely different offense from a pocket passer in Jacoby Brissett to a guy that's more mobile and shotgun-based in Deshaun Watson. You're trying to do that in the middle of a season. It's not possible for anyone to be able to do that. I mean, you could be the greatest offensive mind ever, but you're asking a quarterback that hasn't played in 2 years to step in to a system that, again, the head coach is trying to really design on the fly here because he's going to start the next 6 games and try and lead this team to the playoffs. It was always an uphill battle, not only for Deshaun Watson, but for Kevin Stefanski, because you're trying to do this so quick. You're trying to switch this up so quick in the middle of a season when your entire offensive line and skill position players are already accustomed to a different style offense. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's a huge reason why Deshaun Watson struggled last year, and the offense really took a major dip at the back end of the season.
Yeah, and you know, you're dropping in a new quarterback. You're asking 10 different guys to do things just a little differently. So, if we are incorrect and that wasn't a big factor, it could be a really long 2023 for the Browns. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. You know, I've been hearing and reading and listening to all these experts, and the majority of them have all been picking against the Browns. I'm not going to lie, it does hurt a little bit hearing all the negativity and doubt Browns are receiving. The Browns have earned that doubt. They've earned that disrespect. I don't blame anyone for doubting that the Browns will fall flat on their face again. Obviously, the only way to prove them wrong is to show up on the field and win. Until proven otherwise, we Brown fans can't really be mad at anyone thinking that we're going to fail once again. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. And Tyler, they've had losing seasons 9 of the last 10 years being the Browns. So, again, if there's skepticism, that's why.
Absolutely. And the Browns deserve to have a lot of skepticism around them until you can questionably be a consistent NFL playoff team. There should always be questions. Right now, I've seen some, not many, even say the Browns could finish 4th in this division. That would be brutal, and there'd be a lot of people fired, I feel like, if that happened. But at the same time, if you're picking the Browns to finish 4th, it's kind of hard to argue against that given what we've seen the last 10, 11 years. So I would love to see the Browns favored in everything, but it's always been Cleveland against the world. And I really like having that mentality. You have to go out and earn respect. An NFL team has to go out and earn respect. The Chiefs, everyone respects the Chiefs. Go win a couple Super Bowls, you'll have everybody's respect. But right now, the Browns for last year, this year, and even some other times, not even during the Kevin Stefanski era, but I even bring up when Freddie Kitchens became head coach and we brought in Odell Beckham Jr. It's great to look good on paper, but you have to look good and do it on the football field. And the Browns have just not proven for that long stretch of time that they are able to do that. And so it's right to be a little skeptic about the Browns, and a lot of experts are, and they have every reason to be. I mean, a lot of people are judging Deshaun Watson, like we talked about, by the last 6 games, and are trying to say, well, he might never get back to the quarterback that he was, and that's their reasoning for ranking the Browns where they are, and that's fair. You can make that argument, but at the same time, if he's that top 10 quarterback that the Browns have invested in and gave up all those draft picks for, he takes this team to levels that we haven't seen before, and I think we're going to see that this season.
Yeah, again. If you give up 3 first-round picks plus, you expect a quarterback to be certainly in the top 10 in the NFL, without question. All right, this is from Pro Football Focus. Ranking the NFL divisions by strength heading into the 2023 season, no surprise. Number 1 is the AFC North, and that's one of the reasons that the Browns are going to have such a tough sledding. AFC West was 2nd, NFC East 3rd, and AFC East 4th. Those seem pretty fair, pretty accurate. They say Myles Garrett earned the highest PFF pass rushing grade the last NFL season, but they'll need Deshaun Watson to produce better than his 51.6 PFF grade, 34th out of 36 quarterbacks in 2022. And again, we've We've already talked about why we think that was the case. For the Browns to be good, they're going to need Watson to be really good. That defense has to be significantly better. And again, it looks better on paper, but got to go do it.
Absolutely. And the AFC North is by far, I think, the toughest division in the NFL. I think a lot of us agree on that. We're not just being homers in that regard. AFC West, obviously right up there. Makes a lot of sense given that there is a lot of talent at quarterback in that division. But, again, Deshaun Watson, that PFF grade, it is very bad. There's no doubt about that. But keep in mind also the amount of games the Browns lost last year based off their defense. Unfortunately, we bring up the Jets game a lot. That was a big one. And you could make the argument that really changed a lot of people's thoughts on the Browns after that game. But we saw it even week 1 against Carolina, the defensive lapses we were seeing. Jim Schwartz is one of the biggest additions the Browns had this offseason, regardless of the talent that we brought in on defense, regardless of bringing in Elijah Moore. Bringing in Jim Schwartz is a huge addition because right now you have one of the most respected and proven NFL defensive coordinators. He's had top-level defenses that he's coached. He's won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles as their defensive coordinator. If he turns around this defense and really turns them into what we believe we should see, again, you can look great on paper. You bring in Juan Thornhill, you bring in Dalvin Tomlinson, you bring in Okwankwo, Isaiah McGuire, you bring in some of these defensive additions, you expect this to turn around fairly quickly, and it should. Also, Rodney McLeod, having him as a veteran is really going to help out, and trading for Zadarius Smith. But at the end of the day, Jim Schwartz now has the keys to this entire defense, and I think the Browns are going to be a top 10 defense, and they should be, because right now when you look on paper, there are not too many defenses that possess the level of talent that the Browns do on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and you're talking about a defense that was probably bottom 5. If it goes to top 10, that's a big swing in and of itself, and you add in the quarterback, and it would make it the same. So Deshaun Watson took some of the offensive skill positions, some of the defensive backfield, the secondary guys to Puerto Rico. Also took some time to head to social media, take a look at some TikTok videos as Deshaun Watson seems like he's ready to go, and you want your quarterback to be relaxed and having fun, and I'm anxious to see Deshaun Watson settle in with this group of skill position guys. Again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Best offensive line he's played behind will be this year with the Browns. Best running back he's played with will be Nick Chubb. That should help set aside that offense and give him the ability to lift up the offense with what he has at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like seeing those types of TikTok videos, whether it's Deshaun Watson, Elijah Moore, Myles Garrett, whoever it is. Enjoy your offseason. These guys began OTAs here this week. They deserve to have all the fun they want in the offseason. And you know Deshaun Watson's been putting in endless work. I mean, we've seen all kinds of videos and whatnot, and a lot of the other members of the offense have been in defense as well. So I love seeing players have fun like that. But you mentioned it. He's got a lot of weapons at his disposal. Nick Chubb, the best running back in the NFL. Yeah, I said that, and I believe it. But you look at Elijah Moore. I think that addition, we've talked about him a lot. Elijah Moore, as an addition to this Browns offense, I think he's going to really break out this year. New York, that was just tough given the whole Zach Wilson situation, all the quarterbacks they went through. But now he just brings another dimension in this offense that we don't have. One, a really good slot guy, but also can play inside out. Very flexible in that regard. Very fast wide receiver. Marquise Goodwin's another valuable addition. Just having that consistent guy as a deep threat. So Deshaun Watson's got a lot of tools at his disposal. And you even mentioned the offensive line. This offensive line can stay healthy. That's been the biggest issue, especially with Wyatt Teller, Jed Wills, and Jack Conklin. If they can stay healthy, the sky's the limit for this offense in 2023.
Tyler Johnson and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Pro Football Focus, what they think about the Browns defense, plus predicting breakout players at OTAs as well as minicamp. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs podcast as well as Network 216. Brad Spielberger from the Pro Football Focus NFL show talking about the upgrade of the Browns defense.
I think they had a great offseason as well. Obviously capped off with a recent move with the trade for Zadarius Smith. Smith had more pressures than every edge rusher not named Myles Garrett combined on the Cleveland Browns last year. You also bring in Ogbo Okoronkwo from Houston, which I love now because, you know, on passing downs, on third downs, you probably kick Smith inside and have Okoronkwo, Garrett on the edge, and then Smith and Dalvin Tomlinson on the interior. I mean, that is a gigantic upgrade from what they had last year. And Jim Schwartz is now calling the shots on defense, which I think is going underrated. You know, everyone should be kind of, you know, lauding Miami for getting Vic Fangio. Schwartz is a really, really good defensive play caller as well. We saw at Tennessee, they rotated 9 dudes on the defensive line, half of whom you probably never heard of, and all of them were very, very productive, very good players. So I think they did phenomenally.
Yeah, and when you look at it, Tyler, I think the addition of Jim Schwartz is being overlooked by some nationally. Because he was a senior assistant, he wasn't a coordinator. It has head coaching experience. And that defensive line, he is a guy that likes to find matchups and exploit them, and he's got a lot of pieces to move around.
Yeah, Jim Schwartz, the addition of him just can't be overstated if you're the Browns. You go from Joe Woods to Jim Schwartz, and it's a massive upgrade. I mean, we talked about Jim Schwartz has been a defensive coordinator for a Super Bowl winning defense with the Philadelphia Eagles, been a head coach with the Detroit Lions, and that was never the best situation. They never seemed to really put a good team around him necessarily. But either way, he has always succeeded pretty much everywhere he's been as a defensive coordinator. There's no reason why he can't succeed here. Zadarius Smith, bringing him in, having him opposite of Myles Garrett. I mean, I would have loved to see a video of Jim Schwartz after that trade just to see his reaction to that and acquiring a talent like Zadarius Smith. But now your pass rush rotation is completely set. He's going to be able to rotate these guys however he wants. And they mentioned on third downs, sliding Zadarius Smith inside Myles Garrett and Ogbo on the outside. You can do that. You can even put Myles Garrett inside, Smith and Ogbo on the outside. Even if you want to bring in Isaiah McGuire, Alex Wright, you can do that. You could have 4 defensive ends on the field. I mean, if you want to put in, because Alex Wright is a really big guy for a defensive end. If you slide him inside too, endless possibilities that Jim Schwartz has on defense. And you bring in Rodney McLeod as well. If you want to run a 3 safety set with Rodney McLeod, Juan Thornhill, and Grant Delpit, you can do that. You're loaded at corner. I mean, you look at Martin Emerson Jr., Greg Newsome II, Denzel Ward, A.J. Green. He has all the weapons available. Dalvin Tomlinson, Siaka Ika. I still would love to see them add like a Matt Ioannidis at defensive tackle to really solidify that, or Shelby Harris, another veteran. That's really the only thing I would say about the defense. Jim Schwartz has all the tools available. And on paper, again, the Browns look great on defense. They do. Put it together, I think Jim Schwartz will get the best out of this group. And if they do, this is a top 10 defense, and I think could be one of the best defenses in the NFL, just with the talent they possess and with the level of experience that Jim Schwartz has, getting the best out of all his players on defense.
So this is from the Bleacher Report, every NFL team's most dangerous addition to the 2023 roster. They go with Zadarius Smith. Having Smith in the pass rushing rotation will help ensure Cleveland's pass rush doesn't begin and end with whatever Garrett can provide. For a team ranked 20th in points allowed last season, that's huge. And 20th was, I mean, that's better than I thought it would be based on how much they struggled in run defense. So the run defense will be better as well.
Yeah, the addition of Dalvin Tomlinson is really going to help with that. And I still think you need another defensive tackle because right now, if you look at the rotation, You have Dalvin Tomlinson. You have Siaki Ika. You have Jordan Elliott. You have Tommy Togiai, Maurice Hurst, and Tristan Hill. Maurice Hurst has not played a full NFL season in about 2 years, I would say. He's always battled some sort of injury. You're not relying on him to be a guy that is necessarily a starter for you. If he can be, it's a bonus. He does have talent, but injuries are the biggest thing. Tristan Hill has massively underachieved ever since he's come into the NFL. So those are really two wild cards that you sign to maybe find lightning in a bottle, kind of like they did kind of like Andrew Berry did a couple of years ago with Malik McDowell. Very similar situation with those two. Outside of that, you have Dalvin Tomlinson, who's very proven at defensive tackle, who's going to help with that run defense. Siaki Ika will as well, but I don't think you want Ika necessarily starting alongside Tomlinson a lot and playing a majority of snaps as a rookie. So that's why I think another veteran defensive tackle is needed. But even Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai, I think we saw last year, given the run defense, we don't really want those guys to start this year or play a significant amount of snaps. So the run defense is going to be massively improved. And I even think Zadarius Smith is going to help with that a lot. But I think to really shore this up on the defensive side of the ball, add one more veteran defensive tackle. Even if that's Ndamukong Suh, I think he could be a nice rotational guy, especially at his age. Even if the Browns go out and do that, you've solidified that run defense. But again, one more guy. I know we keep saying it like Andrew Berry's done a lot this offseason. One more defensive tackle to shore up that defensive line.
All right, this is from the Bleacher Report as well, predicting breakout players at OTA's minicamps for the Browns. They say Elijah Moore, wide receiver, flashed that he was capable of at times over the first 2 NFL seasons in New York, but he was playing for the Jets and often didn't have the necessary quarterback play to put up huge numbers. The other thing is they kept bringing guys up in front of him. They went out and drafted Garrett Wilson. They brought in Corey Davis. So for whatever reason, the fit was never exactly right there for Elijah Moore. And there were times they just didn't use him right.
Yeah, if you see some of the film on Elijah Moore, there are times he has ran some fantastic routes and the throw is nowhere near. If Zach Wilson throws his way, it's nowhere near him. Or other times, Zach Wilson's throwing incomplete to somebody else, and Elijah Moore standing there wide open. His ability to create separation, putting him along with Amari Cooper, you have 2 receivers in the NFL that are some of the best route runners in the league. He's never played with a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. I don't think it's foolish to say that Elijah Moore could have 1,000 yards this year and probably 4 or 5 touchdowns. I really don't think it is. He is that good of a playmaker, and I don't really know, after the rookie year that he had for the Jets, I don't know. Now, Garrett Wilson is going to be, I think, a top 10 NFL wide receiver at some point, and it might even see it this year under Aaron Rodgers. I kind of understand why they drafted Garrett Wilson, but at the same time, there were other receivers in that class you could have gotten possibly in the 2nd round or 3rd round. You saw what Elijah Moore did at the end of his rookie year, and the numbers he posted were absolutely stellar before he got injured. I don't really know why they brought in all these guys to take reps away from him. I really don't. But I'm glad he ended up on the Browns. I think Deshaun Watson's going to love him, and I can't wait to see Elijah Moore on the field because he's an exciting player. I've wanted him ever since he came from Ole Miss. He's going to be an exciting addition for this Browns offense.
Yeah, I have a pretty good feeling about him, too. He may be that guy that can figure out the scramble drill and develop some chemistry. If he does that, I think 5 is the low side and 9 or 10 may be the high side for him. All right, 2 other guys that they talk about before we go to break on the defensive side of the ball. They say Alex Wright spent a year learning from Garrett, which could start paying dividends on the field 2023. There won't be the pressure on Wright to succeed as he'll be worked into a backup in the mix on that rotation. And Martin Emerson last year demonstrated great coverage ability. Even if he didn't make a ton of game-changing plays, those should come as his career goes along, especially if he continues to have the type of success he did against wide receivers in 2022. The other thing about him, they didn't throw against Wright a whole lot, and that's probably the biggest compliment you give a rookie. They weren't picking on him, so to speak.
Yeah, they did not test Emerson that much. I think Brady did a couple times with Mike Evans, but Emerson held his own against the bigger body Mike Evans. I mean, and Emerson's a bigger corner, so that does help. But Emerson was a standout for the Browns on that defense. There weren't many players that you could say that about. The defense as a whole, outside of Myles Garrett, had a really, really tough year. But Martin Emerson Jr. was a bright spot that came out of nowhere for a lot of Browns fans, especially when we drafted him in the 3rd round. Alex Wright is a good one because Alex Wright, like the article said, there's not going to be a lot of pressure on him this year. He's going to be probably that 4th edge, maybe 5th edge. He's going to be competing with Isaiah McGuire for that spot. 6'5", 267 pounds. At that, he can slide inside. He can play outside. Maybe they look to use Alex Wright a little bit more inside. I think that's something that they're going to try and take advantage of this year, Jim Schwartz is. And again, he's only going to be 23 years old. So there's no reason for him to be pressured into playing a high majority of snaps. You hope that everyone at defensive end can stay healthy, and I think they will. But Alex Wright's a guy that's going to have the opportunity to learn from Myles Garrett. And he's also going to learn from Zadarius Smith. Also, Ogbo. He's going to learn from other veterans, and I think that's going to be really good for his overall growth because last year he really didn't have that. Jadeveon Clowney was very inconsistent, missed a lot of time due to injury. Outside of that, he had to play a lot of snaps with Myles Garrett because Chase Winovich missed a lot of time too. And you're relying on Chase Winovich to kind of be your 3rd or 4th end in that situation. So this is going to be really beneficial for Alex Wright, and I think he is going to be, by the time we get to 2024, he might be your 3rd defensive end or even possibly your starter if he continues to improve.
Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs Podcast Network, 216 and I. Going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs Podcast as well as Network 216. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Danielle. Hey, Dave, I love your show. I just want to call and comment on the passing of legendary Mr. Jim Brown. I suggest that we should have an honorary parade in downtown Cleveland for Jim Brown, number 32. So, Brownies, what do you guys think? All right, bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tyler, they got to put I want to see them put 32 either on the uniforms, on the field. You know, they used to put logos and stuff in the corner of the end zone. Do something that makes it prominent.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely not against a parade at all. I do think as far as for this season, the Browns should put a decal on the back of their helmet. I would love to see that. And I also think a jersey patch, do those two things, and maybe find a way to put that number 32 in the middle of the field this year in some regard. Maybe put a Browns helmet there and then number 32. Honor Jim Brown. I would love to see that personally. I think I'm really curious to see what they come up with. I bet that's been a good topic of discussion here the last couple of days on how they want to honor Jim Brown, and absolutely needs honored in a good way by the Browns. 8 all-time NFL selection, 126 career touchdowns, 9 seasons, 9 straight Pro Bowls, and ran for over 12,000 yards during that time in 9 seasons. Yeah, I mean, not only is he a fantastic football player and just the person that Jim Brown was and the impact he had off the field, and I can't wait to see how the Browns honor him because the Haslams really brought him back as being a symbol of the organization, and I'm glad they did that. I can't wait to see what they have planned for honoring him.
Yeah, it needs to be big. Whatever it is, make it very prominent. All right. So buying or selling NFL's latest storylines in every division. This is from the 33rd team. AFC North. Most coaches on the hot seat ? Eric Mangini, former Browns head coach, says sell. The only coach that could happen this year to be on the hot seat would be Kevin Stefanski, and I don't even know if that's fair at this point, considering the transition they had to make with Deshaun Watson missing 11 games and everything else that came into play with that. You have to at least give him through this season and see what happens, because he's done a lot of great things at that place that's been hard to do a lot of great things at. That's probably fair. The Browns would never say it publicly, but when the suspension was moved to 11 games, that made last year a real uphill climb.
Yeah, last year, and you never want to say a coach should get a pass for a season, but when Deshaun Watson was suspended for 11 games, that almost seemed to me like this is a pass. Whatever happens this year, Kevin Stefanski gets a pass for it. There are a lot of people might disagree with that. Like, you still have to find ways to win games, and I do agree you need to do that. And I thought Jacoby Brissett really did a good job of keeping the offense afloat best they could. I thought Kevin Stefanski still did a really good job for this team winning games. There were just so many lapses throughout the year, and again, a lot of them came back to defense, and I think that's why they moved on from Joe Woods. They just had to do that at that point. But I agree with Eric Mangini here. I see why Kevin Stefanski, though, is on the hot seat, because you have owners. Jimmy Haslam has shown in the past that he is not very patient. In this case, he has been very patient with Stefanski, with Andrew Berry. I think at this point, Deshaun Watson, if he plays a full season, and let's say the Browns don't meet the expectations that they should as far as making the playoffs, I could see the Browns making a coach. I think a lot of people see a Browns making a coaching change, because at that point, Kevin Stefanski's been here for 4 years. He's finally got the quarterback. Because if Deshaun Watson succeeds and the Browns still aren't making the playoffs, it's going to be on the coach at that point, to where I think Jimmy Haslam would say, I got to make a change, even though he might not want to do that. He might think that's what's best for the organization. But Kevin Stefanski, any coach going into that situation last year with Deshaun Watson and what they had to deal with, should have been given a pass, because it was a near impossible task to try and get that team into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I get the in-game questions and all that. That comes with the job of being an NFL head coach. But the one thing I would say, the year he had his starting quarterback healthy for a full season, he won Coach of the Year and he made the playoffs. Then you played with an injured Baker Mayfield. Now, we can argue back and forth forever who should have sat him down. And then you played with basically what was expected to be your backup quarterback the last 2 years when you've been under 500. So, I understand the point, but it's time for Kevin Stefanski to win football games with Deshaun Watson. Along those lines, this is from Dawgs by Nature. Against AFC North teams, so the divisional teams, Browns are 7-2 under Kevin Stefanski at home against the AFC North, but they're 2-7 under Kevin Stefanski on the road in the AFC North. Those aren't surprising. This is historically a tough division. The Steelers are always right around 500. Hell, they haven't been under 500 under Mike Tomlin, and the Bengals have been one of the best teams in football. So, yeah, it's tough to win on the road, and you better beat them at home. It goes to show the job he's done has been pretty good.
Yeah. Think about where the Browns were before Kevin Stefanski got here, and the 1-31 that we went through as a fan base. The fact that under Stefanski, not only you're 7-2 at home against the AFC North, I mean, you are 2-7 on the road, but you were essentially 500 against your division over that period of time. Every fan would have signed up for that. It's been a remarkable turnaround, not only under Andrew Berry, but Kevin Stefanski, to get this organization stable into a position where we can say we should be contenders every single year. It's been a remarkable turnaround, truly. Everyone wants to make the playoffs every year. We all should as a fan base. But just look at the consistent improvement that we have seen since Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry took over. And, yeah, I know there have been circumstances that have changed that. You talked about the injury to Baker Mayfield. That was huge. There's a lot of debate, like you said, on who should have sat him down. But when everyone was healthy and Baker Mayfield was quarterback during that time and the Browns went to the playoffs, if the Browns arguably had not a healthy Deshaun Watson, but Deshaun Watson for a full year last year, I think there's a good chance they make the playoffs, even with Joe Woods at defensive coordinator, because I think Deshaun Watson, if you're going from that 2020 and putting him in the 2022 Browns, having that full offseason with this offense, I think they still could have been a playoff team last year. But just look at the transitions we've made these last 4 years. We can, again, talk about all the negatives during this time that we've had to deal with, but we also should look at it as the fact that this offense is, this entire organization is completely night and day from when Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry took over.
Yeah, now, I agree with you. Now it's time to take it from perennial 500 to perennial playoff team. And that's got to be it. The time to do it is now. And if they don't, then there's going to be consequences. And there should be. To be fair, they've gotten it to where it's stable. Next step is, all right, you got to be a playoff team year in and year out. Tyler Johnson and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, NBC Sports Edge ranks the GMs in the NFL. We'll tell you what they said about Andrew Berry. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs podcast, as well as Network 216. So NBC Sports Edge ranked the NFL GMs. They ranked Howie Roseman from the Eagles #1, Andy Reid, Brett Veach from the Chiefs #2, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch from the 49ers #3. They say Andrew Berry is number 18. Here's the rationale. And it's a question. Is Andrew Berry going to be defined by a move he didn't even make? ? Because there are, quote, ownership moves, end quote, and then there's what Jimmy Haslam did with Deshaun Watson. That's not to say there is evidence Berry was against it. It doesn't matter now anyways, as Watson is defining everybody's future in Cleveland. That's middle of the pack towards bottom half of NFL general managers. And I don't think Andrew Berry deserves to be outside of the top 10. If you don't have a franchise quarterback in the NFL or a quarterback you think you can give the ball to in the fourth quarter and win, you're always looking for that guy. And they thought they found him in Deshaun Watson. Now, if they misread that, that's one thing. But you still got to find the guy.
Exactly, Dave. You're not going to succeed in the NFL without a franchise quarterback. It's not going to happen. If it does happen, it's a once-in-a-blue moon type of situation. It's very rare. If you don't have your guy, you have to go get your guy. That's the way the NFL always is. There are always teams trying to do whatever they can do to get their franchise quarterback. I mean, the Jets waited months to get Aaron Rodgers. Basically turned everything around on that franchise in order to get him. There are all kinds of other scenarios. The Broncos, look what they gave up for Russell Wilson, and they're hoping he can find his groove back with the Broncos. So NFL teams are always trying to do whatever it takes to find that franchise quarterback. And you know what? Andrew Berry being 18th, yeah, I disagree with that as well. Just look at what he's done as far as changing this roster since he got here and what he's had to do in order to improve it. You know, I mean, a lot of people will say the contract for Deshaun Watson looks really bad. You can say that now, but you're also judging that off of 6 games after not playing football for 2 years. So, yeah, I really disagree with those rankings. And any NFL GM wants to keep their job. They're going to do whatever they can to go get a franchise quarterback. That's why you see teams really trade up and make some outrageous trades during the draft in some cases to go get a quarterback. And at that point, you're banking on a rookie. The Browns are banking on someone that's already proven that he can succeed as an NFL quarterback at an elite level.
Yeah, and you mentioned Rodgers and Wilson. Those guys are substantially older than Watson. Rodgers and Wilson, rather. They're substantially older than Watson. They got a guy that's in the prime, and that's why you give up 3 first-round picks. He should be entering the prime of his career. So, again, it all comes back to, can he get back to the level that he was before missing basically 2 years? All right, Doug Pound Daily, ranking the Browns' 4 worst moves this 2023 offseason. Number 4, staying the course at linebacker. Number 3, not adding another running back. Number 2, ignoring the slot. And number 1, banking on Jordan Elliott. I don't know that they're necessarily banking on Jordan Elliott, and I don't know that they ignored the slot. You've got a couple of guys you can switch in and out through that slot, and they may still add another running back. I mean, let's...
Yeah, I see these, and I would say it's a little too early to kind of say these are the worst moves of the offseason, because now I do agree with linebacker. I feel like you needed to make an addition there. That maybe they still could. And I mean, Andrew Berry might not be done. There's a good chance he's probably not done. Not another running back. To this point, I do agree with that. But again, we haven't even had OTAs. We haven't had training camp yet. That can still change. Ignoring the slot, I think Elijah Moore is going to play in the slot for you. So I don't think they ignored that one. Banking on Jordan Elliott. Until they add another defensive tackle, that's a fair one, because we have not seen enough from Jordan Elliott to really say this guy should be our starting defensive tackle, even though Myles Garrett seems to really believe Jordan Elliott's going to take a big step forward this year. But I think these are a little bit too early to really say that these are the worst moves of the offseason, because the offseason is not over. I mean, OTAs start this week. We haven't had training camp yet. We haven't had preseason games. There are going to be players cut that Andrew Berry possibly looks to sign. I think of a name that comes to mind is Cordell Patterson from the Atlanta Falcons. If the Falcons don't trade him, I don't think they're going to be able to trade him. He gets cut. I think he could be an addition the Browns look to sign at a very cheap contract. There are going to be moves still to be made here. So a little bit too early to say some of the worst moves at this point, just because there's still a lot more to go this offseason.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And Andrew Berry is going to constantly try to churn that back half of this roster to try to get that right mix. Tyler Johnson, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tyler.
My pleasure, Dave. Thank you.
All right, Tyler Johnson, make sure you check him out. Faithful Dogs podcast, as well as Network 216. We're going to take a quick timeout. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Jackson McCurry straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Pro Football Focus's Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson on if Za'Darius Smith is in fact the missing piece for the Browns defense.
Za'Darius Smith being traded to the Cleveland Browns. I think this is a potential home run for the Browns. But in 2019 with the Packers, 88.8 pass rush grade. 2020 with the Packers, 84 pass rush grade. And then last year with the Vikings, 85 pass rush grade. His last 3 full seasons, Za'Darius Smith is one of the most valuable edge defenders in the NFL.
I mean, he's basically averaging 70 pressures a season over those last 3 years, which is a figure that only 4 guys, edge rushers in the NFL last season, exceeded. He's the best defensive lineman the Browns have ever had alongside Myles Garrett. On paper, this looks as good as that defensive line has looked for a long, long time, and it's probably the best collection of talent they've had around Myles Garrett since he's been there, which is huge because it's been Myles Garrett and nothing else for the last few years.
And with that, let's welcome in Jackson McCurry from the DawgLand and Top Dogs podcast. And Jackson, if you put the best people around the best player, you would expect that to elevate his play more just because teams can't focus on him as much.
Yeah, since he's entered the league, Myles Garrett, it's just been him and a bunch of other guys. Like, you had Olivier Vernon for a little bit, Clowney in 2021, but it's been the Myles Garrett show on the defensive front since he entered the league on the Browns defensive line. So I thought they had a good offseason adding pieces around him. And then adding Za'Darius Smith when they were rumored and looking at other free agent defensive ends, I think it was icing on the cake for the way that Andrew Berry and company have overhauled this defensive front. And I just can't wait to see them hit the ground running week 1 against Cincinnati when the Browns defensive front has caused havoc on Joe Burrow since he's entered the league. And now with all the new additions, hopefully Cincinnati's offensive line is ready, but at the same time, hopefully it's not for the Browns' sake.
Yeah, and, you know, we tend to forget they mentioned the pressures by Za'Darius Smith. One of the other 4 was Myles Garrett. So now you've got 2 of the top, 5 in terms of sacks and pressures playing on the same offensive or defensive line, rather.
Yeah, I looked up the numbers when you guys sent me the notes today. Jadeveon Clowney, Alex Wright, and Isaiah Thomas combined for 49 pressures last year. Myles Garrett had 78. Za'Darius Smith had 78. So right there's 156 pressures, not to mention all the sacks they've had. I know Myles Garrett's had 4 straight double-digit sack seasons. Za'Darius Smith's had 3 on his last 3 full seasons. Obviously, 2021, he was hampered with a back injury. But this might be the most dominant pass-rushing duo in the NFL. And, there's been some questions about Za'Darius Smith's character and everything, but it seems like players love to play alongside him, and he wanted to come to Cleveland to play with Myles Garrett. So I can't wait to see what those 2 do together on the field.
All right, and along those lines, in 2022, PFF graded the Browns 8th overall in pass rush, and we've already delineated that's all Myles Garrett. The Vikings had Danielle Hunter, Za'Darius Smith, and Dalvin Tomlinson, and they were 10th. The Browns got 2 of those 3 to pair with Myles Garrett. That should be a significant upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, Myles Garrett, he did a lot of the work, but actually going and deep diving, the Browns' defensive line generated a lot of pressure. They just couldn't put it all together. Myles did for the most part, but when Taven Bryan's your second leading sack guy at 3.5, that says that they just couldn't bring it all together. But the Browns' D tackles had 54 pressures combined last year between Elliott, Taven Bryan, Togiai, and Winfrey. You add Dalvin Tomlinson, Tristan Hill, who had 9 pressures in Arizona, and then Siaki Ika, who had 18 pressures at Baylor, not to mention Okoronkwo, who had 36 pressures, and Isaiah McGuire, who had 35 pressures at Missouri. Add in the fact that you added Tomlinson and Za'Darius Smith. The Browns' defensive front, with a new great addition of Jim Schwartz at defensive coordinator, I think this defensive front has the potential to not only be better than last year, but could be one of the better ones in the entire National Football League.
Yeah, they're going to have they're going to want to dominate the line of scrimmage. That's what the MO is going to be. And if you think about it, the secondary is good enough that you can put them on an island and say, okay, defensive line, don't give this guy very long. Go get him, because we're gonna have our secondary out there playing man-to-man.
Yeah, I think the whole defensive unit's going to be better, even the linebackers. And people are going to say, well, this linebacking core does not look good on paper. I think last year they did not play well because they had to make up a lot of the dirty work or have to clean up a lot of the stuff that the defensive front couldn't muster at the defensive line. So I think the linebackers are going to be better. Hopefully Anthony Walker's back 100%. We get Taki back 100% at some point this year. And I expect JOK to play better. I think he had to clean up a lot of the stuff, the defensive tackles and the defensive line minus Myles Garrett just did not perform well. So I expect the entire unit to play better, including the linebackers, because they get overlooked and a lot of people say that there's no talent there. I tend to disagree. In 2020 and 2021, they played really well as a unit. 2022 was just bad overall in that defensive group. So I would expect the whole unit to improve under Schwartz's leadership.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I am anxious to see how Jim Schwartz kind of unlocks him, and I think he is going to have a big year.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, he was a second-round talent for a reason. He was graded first round by a lot of the draft experts. He fell because of the heart issue. He had a good rookie year. I wouldn't call it great. And then last year he slipped a bit. I think injuries played a factor in that as well. But with good defensive coaching and a great defensive coordinator in Jim Schwartz, I expect him to get the best out of JOK.
All right, before we go to break, this from Pro Football Focus. Breakout candidates for each AFC team. For the Browns, they go with Martin Emerson. Quietly put together an impressive season, earned a 72.5 PFF grade, ranked 23rd among cornerbacks, forced an incompletion rate on 20% of the passes into coverage, 9th best at the position. And again, that's a guy that is probably your third corner because Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. And he was really good.
Yeah, Emerson was really impressive his rookie year. I was really shocked by his development just because I didn't expect a lot out of him as the third or fourth corner potentially. But he did break out. He had some great performances against Mike Evans and some of the other great wide receivers in the league. It's going to be interesting to see what Schwartz has in mind with this cornerback room because you have Denzel Ward, who's obviously the number one. But then how does he view Emerson? How does he view Newsome? Is Newsome going to stay in the slot? Is he going to play outside? Like, how is he going to split that up with Emerson? And I like the selection of Cameron Mitchell in the 5th round because I think he can play inside. He can play outside. Not to mention we have A.J. Green in that room as well. So the cornerback room is still one of the deepest on this roster, but I'm anxious to see how much it differs between Joe Woods' coaching and Jim Schwartz's coaching.
Jackson McCurry from the DawgLand and Top Dogs podcast. And I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll talk more about cornerbacks and cornerback duos in the NFL, and we'll talk a little offense for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns with Jackson McCurry. So Steve Smith Sr. Gives us a little bit of his scouting report on Cedric Tillman, who the Browns took in the 3rd round. This is from Steve Smith Sr.'s Cut to It.
Cedric Tillman, Tennessee, 5th-year red shirt, 6'3", 213 pounds, 4'5'4". No one's talking about Cedric Tillman, but Cedric Tillman is a guy who understands exactly how to play football. He's Mr. Dependable. A lot of contested catches. He does not have the same speed as Hyatt, but I believe he has the ability to contribute a little bit more, understands how to get off press coverage, and he fights for extra yards. Cedric Tillman is a guy who will creep up in the 3rd and 4th round, will surprise some people.
And Jackson, when you have a guy like Steve Smith talking about wide receivers, there's some nuance to it, and it's kind of interesting the way he views Cedric Tillman.
Yeah, it really caught me off guard when he called him one of the sleepers of the draft. And, you know, obviously he didn't get as much love last year because of Jalen Hyatt breaking out. And obviously Tillman dealt with the ankle injury. But you got to go back and look at his 2021 numbers. I mean, if the Browns wanted a vertical threat, they found one in Cedric Tillman. He had 12 catches for 492 yards and 5 touchdowns on catches that went 20-plus yards. So he is definitely that vertical threat, that playmaker that the Browns were looking for and have been looking for since potentially Josh Gordon. I know Amari Cooper's been great. Donovan Peoples-Jones has been great. But Cedric Tillman can be that long-term answer, I think. I think this year you're going to ease him in, you know, as the third or fourth guy, depending on how they see Elijah Moore and his role. But going forward, I could see Tillman and Elijah Moore being that 1-2 punch where Moore is going to be your short catch guy that you might be able to turn into a 60, 70-yard play. But if you want someone to go down the field on a vertical route, I think Cedric Tillman can be that guy.
Yeah, and the thing that's kind of nuanced with Smith talking about that is getting off press coverage. The things that he kind of recognizes in his game will translate to the NFL. This is from Pro Football Focus as well. NFL's most elusive running back, and it's no surprise, Nick Chubb. Chubb is the only NFL running back to rank inside the top 3 at his position, minimum of 200 carries, in both missed tackles forced per attempt and yards after contact per attempt since 2021. And, I mean, let's just go ahead and say it. He's the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And that's been, you know, he's been accompanied by another running back throughout his whole career, whether it was Carlos Hyde at the start of his career, Kareem Hunt the last several years, and now it's potentially Jerome Ford. It could be another veteran running back that they might add this summer or during training camp. But Nick Chubb has been so underrated because he hasn't put up the big numbers that, you know, the McCaffreys, the Kamaras, the Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henrys, whoever you want to name. But he's been so dominant, you know, going to PFF's numbers. He's had 47 explosive runs. That's of 10 yards or more. That's the most in the league last season. 83 missed tackles forced after a run. That was the second most in the league last year. And 1,050 rushing yards after contact last year. So I think if they want to make Nick Chubb the bell cow back this year and just give him all the majority of the touches while easing in Jerome Ford, there's no doubt Nick Chubb could get 1,600 rushing yards if he wanted to. And maybe this is the time where Stefanski cuts him loose and lets him show the world that he is the best back in the league, because everyone here in Cleveland knows it already.
All right, take a look at this. This is from the 33rd team, which are former NFL player, personnel, and executive head coaches types. What's the NFL's best cornerback duo? So you see they do list Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome on there. You got Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard for the Dolphins. That's kind of interesting. Slay and Bradbury, Gardner, Reed. You'd have a tough time, you know, if both are healthy and playing to their capability. I certainly think you could make the argument it would be Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome.
And you can even cut Newsome in half and insert Martin Emerson's face in there as well, because I think we have 3 great corners. You mean, if you want to say who's the NFL's best trio of cornerbacks, I think the Cleveland Browns can make a strong case. But, yeah, when they're both healthy and when they're both on the field, they're both great corners. And I don't expect much to change with Jim Schwartz's defense. They're obviously going to play a lot more man coverage, and I think that's something that benefits both Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome and even Martin Emerson. So, yeah, I think they can make a strong case this year under Schwartz's leadership and coaching to where they can make some noise. And this whole defensive unit could be one of the best in the league. But when looking at that cornerback room, I think that duo has the capability of being one of the best in the league.
Yeah, and you mentioned playing more man-to-man and less zone, and I think that will happen. And I think the cornerbacks that are really good and elite want to play man-to-man. They want that challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Denzel and Greg Newsome have never backed away from a challenge. You know, they talked up a big game going up against the Cincinnati receivers, and, you know, they have tended to back it up so far throughout their careers. The Browns defense has played well against that Cincinnati offense, and Denzel obviously had the big game in 2021 when he had the pick six, shut down Jamar Chase for the most point. Newsome's had good games against them, Emerson as well. So I think these corners are really ready to step up and show to the rest of the league, like, we're here. This Browns defense is coming, and if you want to score points on us, you got to come through the cornerback room, and it's tough to do most Sundays.
Jackson McCurry, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jackson.
Thank you, Dave.
Jackson McCurry, make sure you check him out, the DawgLand and Top Dogs podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.